Hello, folks. Zaide here with another episode of DramaQuest. This one is going to be another lore episode, and we're finally, at long last, back to our epic series. This time we're going to be doing the Mage Epic. Before we jump in, of course, I have to thank the supporters. So for the new folks on Patreon, thank you so much. Tim, Charles, and Jesse, very much appreciate you guys. With that said, we'll jump right in. Our sources today are going to be the game itself, of course, the EverQuest. It's pretty straightforward. And then our handy dandy Game Master's RPG guide. With that said, when we're looking at the Mage Epic, it's pretty straightforward. There's not too much BS with this. I mean, when you're doing it, it feels like it sometimes because some of these items are pretty rare. Looking at you, Pegasus Feathered Cloak. But other than that, it's really not terrible from a narrative perspective. The long and short of this one is that you are following the path of Trilith Magi'kot, who was a famous magician, arguably one of the most powerful magicians to ever live. And you're trying to piece together his journal to see how it was that he attempted to create this Orb of Mastery. As you do it, you find out that Magi'kot failed at the end. And you sort of get an insight into why he failed, which was that he seemed to not have mastered and then balanced all the elements, right? So when he finally got his opportunity to get the orb, he was consumed. The fires burned his eyes, blah, blah, blah. We'll talk about it in greater detail. But so your path is to piece together what he did and then try to do it better. So we'll walk through the epic, and then I'll read you the narrative slides from the book, and that will give us our full view of the Mage Epic 1.0. So the way it would start is you would meet a gnome called Rikus in Lake Rathtier. I feel like a lot of epics start in Lake Rathtier, like the cleric epics here. There's a few other ones, I think. There's a lot going on with Lake Rathtier for these epics. Rikus says, "Greetings. I'm Rikus, chronicler of knowledge. I've journeyed all throughout the lands of Norath, and I have learned many tales of adventure from people I have encountered during my travels. I've learned of legends known and unknown to most mortals. Are you in search of knowledge?" You say, "I am in search of knowledge." He says, "A small task is needed if you wish to learn more. Do you wish to learn the tale of Magi'kot?" You say, "I wish to learn the tale of Magi'kot." He says, "If you seek to learn the tale of Trilith Magi'kot, your journey shall begin in the common lands. Search for Jason Axot and give him this token. He will share some of the knowledge I have bestowed upon him and point you further down your path to mastery. Bring me the words of mastery, power of the elements, and the words of Magi'kot. Then you shall learn more about the power of the orb." So then he gives you a token, and you have to go find this Jason Axot guy. He's over in West Commonlands. If you go up to him and you give him the token and you say, "Rikus sent me," he'll say, "I've not heard of anyone speaking that name out loud in years. Rikus once shared a tale with me, though I have lived with fear in my mind ever since. He told me afterwards that I did not have the balance I thought I had. Have you come for the words of Magi'kot?" And you say, "I have." The words of Magi'kot can only be shared with those elementalists whose minds are of balance. The words were separated into 3 pieces by a high council of magi who feared that the story would bring an end to elementalists throughout Norath. If you feel you wish to read from the sacred power of the orb, then an elementalist of such power would easily accomplish this task. What task? Bring me the torn pages of Magi'kot. The first section can be found in the depths of a tainted forest, warded by an angry lupine. It is rumored that one section is found in the haunted estate of a murderer on a many-armed creature. The last may be found in the belly of an amphibian who thirsts for blood. These are some pretty good hints. It gives you a pretty good insight into where you need to go. So that first one is going to drop from an enraged dread wolf, of course, the lupine, angry lupine, right? Enraged wolf, that's your hint there, in Kithakor Forest. And that tainted forest, of course, Kithakor is the only one in Classic that really fits the bill. Then the second one obviously is Unrest, and then the Many Arms tells us it's a tentacle terror. And the third page Probably the hardest to get out of this little section of hints, but still makes a lot of sense. An amphibian who thirsts for blood is, of course, a bloodthirsty froglock ghoul. I thought that was really awesome. I enjoyed that. So you go and get all these things and you return them to him, all these 3 pages of Magi'kot. And he says, Rikus may have been right about you. Now go find Walnin. Walnin was apprenticed to a very powerful mage. After her apprenticeship was completed, she wished to begin teaching other beings of Norath, even those who knew nothing of the art. I do not believe she was successful, though. Seek her out to further your tale. Good luck on your journeys. So with that, you receive the words of Magi'kot, the combined words from the 3 pieces that you got, and you go searching for Walnin. Walnin is a high elf. In the Butcherblock Mountains, she paths from the docks to Caladim. Hello, I am Walnin, elementalist, summoner, wanderer, and sometimes teacher. Might you be an elementalist in search of the truth? You say, I am in search of the truth. The truth is something not all people can handle or understand. If the truth of the elements is what you seek, then the power of the elements shall reveal all. Have you come to learn of Magi'kot? You say, I have. Magi'kot was the most powerful elementalist of his age. He may have been the most powerful mortal mage of all time. Such was his mastery. He wished to obtain infinite knowledge and wisdom in order to further expand the arcane art of summoning. Do you know what became of Magi'kot? No. Only a few elementalists and followers outside of our circle know what truly happened to him. Even now, many are fearful to speak of his name. If you truly wish to continue, here is what you must do. Gather the power of the earth, warded by a fey creature. Then seek the power of fire, held by an elemental. Next, you will need the power of wind, held by a twirling and prancing wanderer who has been corrupted. Finally, the power of water, held by a ravenous beast who is the minion of a fallen Sarnak. Bring them all to me, and I shall give you the power of the elements. So here you have to basically get an aspect of each element and bring them back to Walnin. You're once again given a series of hints. These hints are definitely a lot more opaque than the first ones. But of course, nowadays, you're probably just following a guide. So the power of earth drops from a fairy guard in Lesser Fadark. The power of fire drops from a blazing elemental and lava elemental in Soleil. The power of wind can drop from a gypsy dancer in Mistmore Castle, found in the ballroom of the castle. And the power of water drops from a variety of mobs in Case Sora. It's interesting when we look at the power of wind dropping from a gypsy. I don't want to get in too much of a tangent here because this is supposed to be about the Mage Epic, but I was recently talking to a friend about EverQuest lore and how werewolves are associated very closely with gypsies in EverQuest, especially at EQ Classic. And we think there was supposed to be something more there that just never really got touched on again. Anyway, a story for another time, I suppose. So you'll go and you'll get these items, and then you bring them back to Walnin. Walnin says, the arcane art of summoning is derived from the power of the elements which surround us. Continue your journey across the ocean of tears. In a dark forest, you should find Axestaff lurking about. Be wary, but tell him that you seek Magi'kot. Hurry now. You do not wish to miss the ship. I think I said forest there, dark forest, but of course it was supposed to be dark fortress, and that fortress is none other than Najena. Naturally, the abode of mages, right, the mage dungeon, as it were, would be a place that you would have to visit during this epic. So Axestaff is a dark elf who hangs out around Najena. So you find him and you say, Hail Axestaff. He says, what do you want? Foolish human, I'm in no mood to treat with beggars. I have half a mind to turn Jabobber here loose on you. Well, don't keep me waiting. State your business or be off with you. You say, tell me about Magi'kot. Axestaff says, that I can help you with. Magi'kot was a powerful elementalist, able to control the power of the elements which surrounded him. He was not able to fully master the elements when I was learning from him, but soon after my departure, I heard rumors that he was going after the Orb of Mastery. At the time, I did not feel he was ready to harness all of the elements, but Magi'kot listened to no one. He was in search of power beyond any held by a mortal. Do you wish to hear more? So here, you learn basically that Axestaff was the apprentice of Magi'kot. I do wish to hear more. Then bring me the torn pages of mastery. There are 4 pages that can be found upon the women in this keep, though Have a care, Najana's followers guard her treasures carefully and delight in punishing trespassers. So these drop randomly off of various mages throughout the zone, including Wrathel and Goblin mages. Gather them all and bring them back. Very well. Take these words back to that shriveled old gnome Rikus if you wish to complete this quest. Now, leave me. It sickens me to be this cordial for so long, and Jabobber needs exercise. Go. I like that they gave him the most stereotypical pet name. Like, the only thing better than Jabobber would be Boner, but yeah, it's really great. So you get your words of mastery at this point. You return to Rikus back in Lake Rathtier, and you give him the words of Magi'kot, the power of the elements, and the words of mastery. He says, I see that you have completed the quest I laid before you. That speaks well of your dedication. Yet you do not realize your journey has just begun. Study this tome. You receive Power of the Orb, which reads as follows. An elementalist's power comes from the Orb of Mastery. The elements of earth, fire, wind, and water are contained within the orb. The Master of Elements holds the orb. He can be found within the plane of sky. No mortal has been able to contain the true power of the orb. Trilith Magi'kot presented himself to the Master of the Elements and the Orb of Mastery. The power of elements brought agony to his mind and body. Magi'kot was not of balance. Fire burned his eyes into blindness. Wind put his mind into a spin. Earth entered his body and aged him like the mountains. And finally, water washed his memories of mortal life away. Failing this test, the orb exacted its terrible price, and now Magi'kot is part of the orb. The bearer of this tome should seek out the Master of Fire and present it to him, for there is much left to be revealed. So at this point, basically, you seek out the masters of each of the 4 elements, and you attempt to learn from each of them so that you can avoid making the same mistake that Magi'kot made. The Master of Fire is Genis Leklebar, who is in Skyfire Mountains. He says, Hello and well met. Humans like you don't often come here. Do you come seeking what I possess? Fire, 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 and fire is mine. I surround myself with fire. I bathe in fire. I consume fire. I am the master of fire. But I digress. Have you come for the element of fire, seeking to fall to the same fate as Trilith Magi'kot? I have come for the element of fire. Lycabar says, The element of fire I can provide you, but you must prove you're able to contain its power. Bring me the torch of the elements, now kept by a doomed lord of merchants. The burning embers from a notable member of Wormkind, who can be found a short journey from here, and a blazing wand, which you should be familiar with. And you must surrender the tome Rikus gave you. But I think you would be happier if you stayed with me and learned more of the beauty of the one true element. Fire. Fire. So now you have to go and obtain the Torch of the Elements, which is from the City of Mist by Net-Ashir, Burning Embers, dropped by Furzakon, or Gilton, or some of the other named worms in Burning Woods, and the Blazing Wand, which of course is from Undertow and Ketch Keep. You give these 3 items to Genis along with the book, and he says, I see that you are well versed in the ways of fire. Indeed, if you are as adept in the other lesser elements, you may just seize the Orb of Mastery after all, and avoid Magi'kot's fate. Take this element and guard it well, for more trials are to come, I assure you. Succeed, and you shall be remembered always. Oh, and watch out for the puddles. You receive the element of fire. Next, you try to get the element of earth. So you seek out Tibbler Milnick in Ferona Vi, a male high elf in a brown robe wandering near the cliff. You hail him and he says, Huh? What? Oh, you speak so fast. It took me a moment. I become used to the slow and stately conversation the earth holds, where a thought can span aeons. I am the master of earth, you know, though I'm usually too humble to say this. That makes me the most powerful mortal in Norath. As everyone knows, the earth is the only real element. All else must give way before its power. Water is absorbed by it, air is ignored by it, and fire is contained in it. But you know all these things, I am sure. Are you interested in obtaining the element of earth? I know Magi'kot was, but we know what happened to him, don't we? I have come for the element of earth. Tibbler Milneck says, combining the following items can bring the element of Earth together. Obtain the Staff of Elemental Mastery Earth, held by the minions of the Prince of Hate. The Dirt of the Underfoot, found on Slick's something or the other. And of course, I shall need the Broom of Trilon and the Shovel of Pawns. Bring all these things, and I shall show you what a true master of the earth can do, and gift you with the element of Earth. Of course, we know the Staff of Elemental Mastery Earth is from one of the minis in Plane of Hate, Magi'kot. This is one of the classic, like, super hard to get drops for the Mage Epic. The Dirt of Underfoot is from Slick Klex in Burning Woods, and the Broom of Trilon and Shovel of Pawns are from quests that I think you do in Soulsec Row, the Temple of Soul Row, earlier in Classic. So you get those, and you bring them to him, and he says, take this element and keep it with you. I wish you the best in your journey, but I must ask you to leave me now. This frantic pace you set makes me nervous. I like the thing that he talks about with the pace. It reminds me very much of, like, the Ents from Lord of the Rings, when the halflings are talking to them and they go to have their little council of the Ents, and it takes like hours, and they're like, oh, hey, did you guys decide on something? They're like, no, we were just doing the introductions there. So I can definitely see that influence here in this Master of the Earth. So once you've got the element of Earth, you now get the element of Water. You find Janalis, Andir, and Erudite in blue robes in Dagnor's Cauldron. It's fitting that it's an Erudite. They're always associated with water in EverQuest. Janalis Andir says, let us dispense with pleasantries. I'm Janalis, as you know. I imagine you want to control the elements. The element of water, which I possess, is the most powerful of the elements. With it, you can control the water which falls from the air, erodes the earth, and extinguishes fire. It is a pity you do not focus on the prime element. But if you wish to follow that full Magi'kot to your doom, I will not stop you. Bring me the Staff of Elemental Mastery Water, held by the last of the Kedge. The Tears of Erolacy, held by a dirty and rotten officer across the Blessed Deep. And finally, the Reign of Karana, found on a mighty giant in, where else? The Karanas. So, of course, we know exactly where the Staff of Elemental Mastery Water is from, because they tell us directly. It's from Fingalotropos and Kedge Keep. The Reign of Karana drops from Tarbul and East Karana. And the Tears of Erolacy are from Captain Rotgrime in the Over There. Give these items to Janalis, and he says, or she says, you have the control needed in order to manipulate the water which surrounds us. Take this element and guard it well. You will need it in the times to come. And finally, our last element, our final one, the element of wind. Find Cajon Solstin, a human, in the quest room below the first island in Plane of Sky. Cahoon Solstin says, so, you have made it this far. I'm Cahoon Solstin, the master of wind. I control the unfettered element like none other. As you should have learned, air is the most potent of elements. It fuels fire, water is comprised of it, and earth cannot restrain it. Knowing this, do you seek the element of wind? I do. I will test you then. In this wondrous plane of air, find the crown of elemental mastery, and search the world below for an elemental binder, and a cloak fashioned from the feathers of a Pegasus. Return them to me, and I shall give you the element of wind. So this riddle is pretty straightforward. Crown of Elemental Mastery, of course, he says directly, is from Plane of Air. From the world below, an elemental binder. World below being the whole, the Underdark, or not the Underdark, the Duke of Below, the area down there. So, and then a cloak fashioned from the feathers of Pegasus. Everyone knows that legendary item, Pegasus Feather Cloak. You get these 3 items, and you bring them back. If you have obtained the other lesser elements, go, speak with the Master of Elements, who is now waiting for you. I wish you luck. If you've not completed all the tasks set for you, let me know, and I shall let you see the Master. So he gives you the element of wind. After you get that, you go talk to the Master of Elements. He says, I am the Master of Elements. Forgive me. I am unaccustomed to speaking this mortal tongue. Might you be the one? You say, I am the one. Trilith Magi'kot knelt before the orb in his last few moments of mortal life. He too believed that he had the power and balance needed to grasp control of the elements. He was flawed, coming to me as a matter of no small import, only one who is of balance and power. power may control the Orb of Mastery. Give me the elements you have gathered, and I shall see if you are ready to control the elements of life. So you give him the 4 elements. Master of Elements says, you are balanced and powerful for a mortal, more so than Magi'kot, but you are not yet ready to transcend this mortal coil. Take, seize this orb, for you are worthy of reward. And with the aid of the balance contained within the orb, you may yet reach the ultimate mastery. You receive the spell, Summon Orb, and that, once cast, summons your new epic weapon, the Orb of Mastery. And that is the quest as it exists in game. I think the climax of the quest is really, really cool. The way they do the speaking from the Master of Elements is really interesting. Like, you could see that he's not used to talking with mortals, so he struggles with it, but it adds some gravitas to it, some gravity to it. And this epic, just like the Monk epic, gives you that opportunity to say the amazing phrase, I am the one, which I'm a big fan of. So with that said, let's go ahead and read the narrative walkthrough of this epic from the Game Master's Guide. Many associate the legend of the Orb of Elemental Mastery with a mage called Trilith Magi'kot. Unfortunately for all, the written knowledge gathered over the years in the name of Trilith, he never wielded the orb himself. It is, tragically, his failure that is remembered most. Trilith was, during his life, considered the most powerful elementalist of his age. Some even speculate that he may have been the most powerful mortal of all time. I'm sure Alcabor would like a word on that. Magi'kot was convinced that he could wield the 4 classic elements simultaneously, bending and shaping them to his whim. In his arrogance, he presented himself to the Master of the Elements, an entity who dwells on the plane of air, who requested the ultimate sacred elemental power. I seek the Orb of Elemental Mastery, he stated, confident that, given all his research, he had the skill to possess this mythical item. With the orb in hand, Magi'kot could further expand the arcane art of summoning and, eventually, ensure himself a place among the immortals. It's interesting that there's another crossover with the Monk Epic here, because with the Monk Epic, you deal with a cult called the Immortals. I wonder if there's any connection, something to look into, I suppose. The Master of Elements regarded Trilith in his arrogance and gave him exactly what the magician so desired, the power of all elements. When the Master began to channel that power through the mortal, Magi'kot's eyes burst into flames. He opened his mouth to scream, but a great wind swelled out. The dust of the earth filled his body and aged him like the mountains. Water swept away his memories, washing all mortal knowledge from his mind. The orb exacted its price, and scholars say that Trilith himself became part of it, trapped within the swirling void, along with the failed entities of aeons past. Trilith's journals and notes were sought after by all practitioners of the elemental craft. One of Magi'kot's students, Axstaff, gathered up what he could of his master's notes and fled into the stronghold of Najena. There, other Teardal Magi could mull over the writings at their leisure in hopes of finding Trilith's mistake. Axstaff was certain that his master's fate was not judged solely on his arrogance, but rather on some missing bit of knowledge that eluded him at the final moment. The rest of Trilith's notes were seized by the High Council of Magi and Eredin, who feared the incident would encourage eager students to attempt such a foolhardy goal and would bring an end to elementalism altogether. Unfortunately, this did not deter ambitious students from seeking the words of Magi'kot. None, however, came close to reaching the skill and mastery that Trilith had obtained. Many determined young scholars sought the advice and counsel of Axstaff within the confines of Najena, in the hope that Trilith's surviving apprentice could bring light to the missing piece of their own research. Some years later, Axstaff himself began to follow in the footsteps of his master, trying desperately to locate the missing pieces of Trilith's notes. Scholars state that Axstaff's sudden interest in the Orb of Elemental Mastery was spurred by a haunting dream. It is reported that the words of the Master of the Elements burned in his mind, Seek the knowledge. Be the knowledge. Axstaff left the darkness of Najena in search of enlightenment. For years he traveled, attempting to reconstruct the entirety of Trilith's journal. Each piece of information he uncovered was quickly absorbed into his razor-sharp mind. His master had failed, he believed, because the erudite had lacked balance. That was a mistake Axstaff would not repeat. He spent his waking moments seeking to unlearn his past life. He could only be limited by the insipid hatred of Neriak, and he dedicated himself to the study of the elements, with or without his master's notes. Decades after Trilith's failures, a dark elf gripping a strange wand entered the High Council of Magi. Clasps at the top of the device held a swirling orb. 4 gems, one red, one green, one blue, and one yellow, adorned the metal fasteners, pulsing with a steady rhythm. Hackstaff bowed to the councils. "I have succeeded where my master failed," he said in a quiet, unassuming voice. The erudite council gasped, and murmurs arose like thunder within the marble halls. Where Trilith had failed, Axstaff had indeed found success. Though Axstaff has yet to divulge the secrets of his journey, many continue in his path, hoping to achieve his success, some inspired further by Axstaff's great achievement. Axstaff has said of his success only this: "Perhaps the missing element is not one of earth, air, fire, or water, but an element hidden within yourself that only you can uncover." At present, Axstaff and the Orb of Elemental Mastery have seemingly disappeared from the face of Norath. Scholars hypothesize that the Dark Elf, finally incapable of restraining his own arrogance, followed Trilith into the unknown void and became overwhelmed by the power of the elements. So there you have it, folks. The Mage Epic. I think the story is pretty simple and straightforward, but there's something about it that I really like. There's a gravity to it that I appreciate, whereas some of the more convoluted epics feel a little bit too much like a fetch quest that just leads you to finding a great item at the end. The Mage Epic was definitely one of the better ones that we've covered so far. I hope you've enjoyed it, and I hope you guys are looking forward to more lore episodes as part of our lore series on DramaQuest. With that said, make sure you join Faceless for the 25th anniversary TLP server. Make sure you subscribe on YouTube, and Zaide out. Have a nice day.